A lot of chatter about Mike Tomlin and people not appreciating him. You better appreciate him before you lose him. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise and Wiggy's ready with his scissors and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that you know, and you know they're your favorites, and they know the teams like no one else. I am your host, Tony the Barber Wiggins, joined by Locked On NFL expert David Harrison. Say what's up, Dave.
What's up, man? So this is our first time doing this in this new Locked On NFL, right? Yeah. So I got to just take just a second and congratulate you, brother. You deserve this. You got a fancy personalized intro video, man. It's on point. You deserve all of it. I'm proud of you. Excited to get going with this new exciting chapter of Locked On NFL with you.
All right. Well, we grew up a little bit, and we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for being an everyday here on Locked On NFL. And thank you, Dave, for saying that, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again on Locked On NFL tomorrow morning for the madman. When I say madman, I mean it. Tyler Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now listen, we are not going to delay this any further. Let's tell you where we're going to be and where we're going to end up here. Segment number 3, here's where we're going to end up. Jordan Love. He's getting the love up in Green Bay. He's changed his narrative while a team in Las Vegas, I have personal knowledge that they might struggle with their little middling quarterback situation. All right, segment 2, Julian Council is going to tell us why there's a rush to believe that the pass rush is not something you believe in Carolina, while Mike Sando joined Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens to discuss the Ravens' approach, specifically their wide receivers. I might have a disagreement with that one. But first and foremost, in the first segment, what we're going to hit is Pittsburgh. We're going to go to Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about the fact that Cam Heyward got some little love from the Steelers. And started out with Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs, man. Let me tell you this. This is a hot topic on, in every circle. We've had this conversation in the barbershop several times about Mike Tomlin. There's some appreciation, but then there's some non-appreciation. I'll compare that to a haircut as soon as we hear from our guys, Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino.
I feel like Mike Tomlin is hard for the NFL community at large. I don't quickly overlook the consistent success of winning. I mean, just every year, right? We talk about he shows up with 9 wins. That's not lost on me. And I know that the last handful of years haven't looked the same as maybe early tenure Mike Tomlin with vintage Ben Roethlisberger, right? Like that, it's obviously different, but this dude getting into the playoffs last year with 3 different quarterbacks like Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky, getting to the playoffs with late career Ben Roethlisberger. If you care about leadership, Mike Tomlin has to be high on your list.
He's the best leader / players coach in the league.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
In my opinion.
There's a lot of Steelers people that do not like Mike Tomlin. I'm friends with a lot of Steelers fans that wish he was fired, and they're mad that he just got an extension.
That is a familiar discussion and points that are pointed out, and shout out to those 2 guys, man, for bringing that. Krabs and Marino are the absolute truth. How do you feel about that, David? Because I know how I feel about Mike Tomlin. How I feel about Mike Tomlin is the way a lot of my clients felt about me for a long time. And every now and then one of them would disappear. That means they went and got a haircut somewhere else, and then they come back and their forehead looks like a windshield because the dude was pushing the line back. So now you miss exactly what you were used to. How do you feel about Tomlin?
I mean, you just illustrated it perfectly, man. Any Steelers fan out there who even entertains the idea of trying to replace Mike Tomlin is spoiled. Like, bottom line, you're spoiled. Like, that's the end. That's the end of the story. This dude has the second most wins of any active coach currently in the NFL. He's a Super Bowl champion. And just like Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs just talked about, the quarterbacks that he played with last year and still made it to the postseason. But let's go to 2019. I know it's a little while ago, but I want to talk about 2019. 14 games, Wig, The Pittsburgh Steelers started with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges. Those were your starting quarterbacks for 14 games. They went 8-8 in that season. Any other NFL head coach, to be quite honest with you, any other NFL head coach probably loses at least 10 games that year with those quarterbacks running their systems. Mike Tomlin's had 2 years of Kenny Pickett, still won 19 of 34 games, never finished below 500. You know how many franchises would love to just have one season above 500 or at 500? Forget never finishing below 500. Just there's some teams just want one. If the Washington Commanders win 9 games this season, Commanders fans are going to be throwing parades for Dan Quinn. Like the only Steelers fans that want Mike Tomlin fired are just flat out spoiled, to be honest with you.
I agree with you. I think when you have one, and let me just preface this. I always say this, and I got to tell you, I'm 55 years old, right? The Steelers have had 3 quarterbacks in my life, and they've all won Super Bowls. That's one of the most amazing things that I can even think of. The thing is though, they got there by being a certain way and doing it the right way, and they understand who they are. Now, the question is does their self-identity, should it change now after all of these years? Maybe, but they are who they are. They're also known for a lot of defense. I happen to think that Mike Tomlin is still a top 5 coach. Do you agree?
Yeah, I've got Mike Tomlin in my number 2 spot. And
Give me the rest of them. I'll
be quite honest with you. I almost have Mike Tomlin as my number 1 coach in the National Football League. The only reason I don't is because Andy Reid's got 3 rings, and you can't. I don't think you can disrespect the rings that way. But to the point I just kind of made, you look at it, and Andy Reid, I mean, he's the current top winning coach in the NFL, right? 4th most in the league or in NFL history in wins. But he's had Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick, Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes as his quarterbacks along the way. Right. If Mike Tomlin has those quarterbacks, I mean, if Mike Tomlin goes from Ben Roethlisberger to Michael Vick to Alex Smith to Pat Mahomes, Mike Tomlin's got 5-6 rings, right? Like that's the way I look at this most likely. So I almost have Mike Tomlin number 1, but I got Andy Reid 1. I got John Harbaugh 3, Sean McVay is 4, and then Kyle Shanahan, who I know we kind of talked about beforehand. He's my number 5, but there are some guys who are creeping up on that 5th spot if Kyle Shanahan can't get the 49ers over that hump.
News out of Pittsburgh, and a guy that Tomlin is a lot alike and probably exemplifies the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise. He got a little love. Check out Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers.
Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast with a breaking news update on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have now signed defensive tackle and longtime captain of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Cam Heyward, to a 3-year extension. Now, what is in this extension? It's a $45 million year over those 3 new seasons. $16 million of that is guaranteed. So, and also this tacks on to the current year that he is under contract. This was the last year of his current deal, as it was stated. So Cam Heyward, this year is a $22.4 million cap hit for the Steelers, but in those future years, looks like it's going to average out to be a bit more like $15 million a year. But this, a lot of people weren't sure if Omar Khan would do this move, the Steelers GM. Why? Because Cam Heyward is entering his 14th season, and he had an injury that nagged him all last season. But the 2 seasons before that, he was one of the better interior pass rushers in the NFL, getting double-digit sacks in both of those seasons. I think that, plus his leadership, plus how he handled this offseason, all landed him that deal. I'll talk about more of that on the Locked On Steelers podcast.
A typical signing, and I don't mean typical in a negative, stereotypical way. It is a typical signing because Pittsburgh takes care of people that take care of them. He's also a great guy off the field. He is an ambassador. He's also a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Give me your assessment of that signing.
Yeah, man. Ohio State legend defensive tackle Cameron Heyward. And just to add on to what Chris just said there, the $16 million guarantee is really interesting because $16 million is what Cam Heyward had left on his current contract before the extension, but that wasn't guaranteed. So basically what they did is they said, okay, we'll guarantee the rest of your money that's on this contract, and you're going to stick around here for a couple more seasons, earn a little bit more money, get some more playtime, maybe get you another Super Bowl ring with never lost head coach Mike Tomlin, and he'll get to retire as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Wig, that's massive. I think that's going to get way undersold in this whole story. But Cam Heyward was drafted in 2011. Wig, how many players entering 2024 are still playing with the team that drafted them in 2011? Take a swing. 254 players drafted. How many of them in 2024 are still playing for the same team?
1.
2.
Wow.
But they both have the same first name, Cam Heyward and Cam Jordan. Those are the only 2 players from the 2011 NFL draft. It's been a while. It's been a little bit of time. Jason Kelsey was one of those players. He retired, so he no longer counts. But entering last season, there were only 4 players. One of those players, Tyron Smith, now with the New York Jets, so he no longer counts either. That's how hard it is. We criticize draft classes and GMs all the time. It is so hard that 11 years later, a decade or so later, the draft capital that you slave over, that you stress over, that fans criticize to the moon and back, 2 players out of 254 are still with those teams. So it's very significant for this kind of thing to happen. And super happy for Cam Heyward to get that deal because he deserves it.
Ironically, the names aren't the only thing that they have in common. They're the same type of person. And
Right.
Teams will always invest in those type of people. Unless you're a team like the Carolina Panthers, who we're going to talk about when we get to segment number 2, because Julian Council has some strong words for them. We'll hear that and more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. That's right, man. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel for a long time, and that's rightfully so, because they're America's #1 sports book, and they deserve to be talked to. Make sure you head over there and look at those win totals for your team, because FanDuel is going to tell you exactly why they do that. But before you do that, we got something a little bit different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sports book. It is FanDuel.com. Segment number 2 here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Listen, we just talked a whole lot about Pittsburgh. We talked about Hall of Fame coaches. We talked about only 3 coaches in 55 years, and the fact that they all won Super Bowls, and then mentioned all of these these good, beautiful character things about Cam Newton, who got money. Now, as they say in the movies, you got the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, I want you to take a listen to what Julian Council has to say about Carolina Panthers.
Pass rush, just don't see it happening. I don't at all. One not being healthy and not having a clue when he's going to be ready to go. That is a problem. He's at least going to be out for the first 4 weeks. Mari Barno, he's not close either. DJ Johnson, K'Lavon Chaisson, do something. Like Chaisson, that's the guy I look at. He was a first-round pick. It's possible. Someone thought he was worthy of being one of the best players in the NFL in that draft class, and the Jags took him. It has not worked out. DJ Johnson, I've heard things where his grade was a lot lower than when the Panthers actually took him. So we'll see how that goes.
That is Julian Council, who will be just like David is here with me every single Wednesday. Julian is here with me on Monday. And let me tell you something. He doesn't sound happy about his pass rush. And if I let Brian Burns walk and go for a first-round pick or whatever it was they got from him, I'd be mad too. It just seems like, for me, there are some teams that absolutely cannot get right. For some reason, I just can't fathom why a 26-year-old pass rusher is somehow too old to be on your team. That just doesn't make sense to me. And then you go out and get K'Lavon. Let me tell y'all something about K'Lavon. He mentioned the Jaguars. Yeah, they had K'Lavon down here, and they kept him 2 years too long. All I wanted y'all to do is just go look at a video of him working out on the beach, and you will understand exactly why it is taking everything in. Look at David laughing, because he knows. I showed it to him before the show, and he was like, oh, my God, what is he doing? So go look at the video, but understand that I do believe banking on him was a mistake, and they're going to have to figure something out. And unfortunately, pass rushers ain't just walking around here unemployed, David.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Carolina Panthers are not going to, they're just simply not going to have, like Julian says, he can't see it just because there's nothing to see, man. I mean, you let Brian Robinson, or you ship Brian Robinson out. Yetur Gross-Matos is on his way out. If you look at last year's sack production, the most sacks this team is bringing back from last year is from Derek Brown, who granted was a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. That's fantastic. But he had 2 sacks, and he's now leading the team. Now, of course, you have Jadeveon Clowney coming in and all that stuff, but then that's great. So he had more sacks last year, right? Got that. Mm-hmm. But looking at the Panthers and what they're bringing back, 2 sacks from a defensive lineman, and take it from someone who covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the year that Vita Vea led their team in sacks. That's great for Vita Vea. That's terrible for the pass rush. That's terrible for your defense. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did everything in their power to go out and solve that problem. The Carolina Panthers, on the flip side, have done everything in their power to create this problem. Like Frankie Louvu was a free agent. I don't know how hard they try to keep him, but now he's in Washington, and I'm covering him out here, and he's expected to be one of the biggest sack producers for this Commanders defense. But Wig, this is why I kind of rack my brain sometimes. I get every coach in the NFL wants to be a head coach, but bro, not every head coaching job is the job that you need to take. The Carolina Panthers, they're doing this. And if you're Dave Canales, bro, you're not projected to be in the top half of the league in salary cap space until 2026. Here's the problem with that. In 2025, you're projected to have the 21st most, whatever you want, 11th least amount of salary cap space, but you only got 37 players under contract. When you take off $10 million for your draft class, you're now down below $34 million in salary cap space in 2025 before you've even signed anybody or re-signed anybody. So that top half of the league salary cap in 2026 that you might have right now, you're not going to have it when 2026 comes. And this team is missing so many different players. There's no way David Tepper is going to be patient enough to let Dave Canales and this team actually build this roster the right way. So I don't see how Dave Canales is going to survive this job without being fired within the next year or two. And so to me, it was a terrible job to take. But, good luck, Dave.
Yeah, you know what? Good. When you mentioned Dave Tepper, I wanted to tell Dave Canales good luck, because forget about the salary cap space. You got to deal with him, and that's a whole mess within itself. They signed him because of what he did for Baker, and I think he is an up and coming guy where he pulled a rabbit out of his hat and he got Baker Mayfield fixed. They were hoping he could do the same thing to Young up there in Carolina. But here's my thing: some teams just get it, and some teams don't. And if you're going to ever figure it out, I think you need an owner that knows how to delegate authority and keep himself out of the situation. And I don't know if Tepper can do that. So you go from Carolina, and then you have these, you talk about spoiled fans a little bit. Hey, let's go to Baltimore, because there's a lot of thought around, and he's very, very polarizing. Everybody's saying Lamar Jackson has all of this pressure, and then other people that cover it a little close will tell you, well, it's on them for not giving the weapons. I got an interesting take on this, but I want to hear from my Tuesday co-host, Kevin Oestreicher.
Do you think that maybe is factored into a little bit of this, where he hasn't had that go-to guy outside of Mark Andrews, or do you think that that's not necessarily a point to you?
No, I do think that is, but that also goes to their orientation as a team and how they sought to win early on in Lamar's career when he probably wasn't ready coming in to be a full-fledged throw it all over the yard. They played to his strengths early, and now they're trying to grow in their offense with more three receiver sets and that sort of a thing. So I think it's also a reflection of style of play, what they've looked for, what they've prioritized, how they've wanted to win, his special talents. I think this year will be very interesting because the quarterback who is one spot ahead of him is Josh Allen. And the perception of Josh Allen in the league here is that, well, he's also a dynamic running threat, that people think they would be more comfortable with him having to wing it and really throw it and put it on his arm to win the games. But this year he doesn't have Stephon Diggs. And last year Diggs was not that good anyway, the second half of the year.
All right, so here's my take on that. I think Lamar gets a bad rap about what he can't do, because most people focus on what he does, and it's so freaking good. It's like Mike Vick level, and maybe even beyond, of being unique. I think it's more of a situation where that has been capitalized on it. But let me tell you about this receiver thing. When you say a guy doesn't have enough, they've actually tried, right? Mm-hmm. I believe the type of receiver that fits what they lead with is where they missed. They won a Super Bowl with Anquan Bolden. That is the perfect receiver for that team. Deebo Samuel is the perfect receiver for that team. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the perfect receiver for that, because they're going to have to block. And they ain't going to have to block, and they're not going to do it begrudgingly. They're going to block because they wake up trying to hit somebody. They probably hit their mama when they got out of the crib. That's just who they are. The style of play in Baltimore, in my opinion, because it's easy to go out and find a wide receiver, right? The style of play has been indicative or has been pivotal into who they surround him with more than his limitations.
I think the problem, like you said, I think the Baltimore Ravens have tried to do enough for Lamar Jackson. Like they've gone out there, they've invested draft capital in the receiver space. They've gone out and invested money in the receiver space. They went out and got Mark Andrews. This year they go out and get Derrick Henry. And of course, Ravens fans are hoping it's not too little too late Derrick Henry, and they're actually going to get something left in King Henry's tank and all that stuff. But I think the fits just haven't been there. And I think part of it is a lack of passing game identity. Like before their current offensive coordinator arrived, Todd Monken, the offensive, the entire presence of the offense was physical running, and that's all we're going to do. So there wasn't really a focus on the pass game. But then Todd Monken comes in and he's trying to craft this pass game out of kind of a mixed matched receiving group. Like Mark Andrews has receiving ability, but he's a very physical dude. Rashad Bateman's kind of a more physical type receiver, but he hasn't been really all that good. Odell Beckham Jr. is definitely more of a flash run by you type of guy. Zay Flowers is kind of that type of guy. They've just got this kind of like mismatched group of receivers and tight ends, and they don't have a true pass game identity. I think that's what they really need to do, because I look at Zay Flowers and I look at Derrick Henry, and they belong in two separate types of offenses, yet here they are trying to coexist on the same roster. So it's really going to be indicative of Coach Monken to really put Lamar Jackson in a position where he can use his speed weapons when the situation calls for it, but he can also use his physical weapons when the situation calls for it, and being able to rise up to that level no matter who your opponent is.
No, I totally agree with you. And this goes back to what we talked about in our first segment about people get spoiled, man. I mean, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, the coaches are in our top 5. We just mentioned it. And people just, I know you want to win a championship. I know you want to win the Super Bowl, the championship, man, but make sure you count your blessings with what you have, because I take Mike Tomlin and I take Lamar Jackson in a heartbeat. Now, in segment 3, we're going to mix two things that don't normally mix. We're going to mention love and Las Vegas. Normally, that's like an oxymoron, right? Not to us here, because we're going to Green Bay and then we're going out to Vegas to talk about some quarterbacks. We'll get to that in segment 3 here on Locked On NFL. And guess what? Passion, drive, and patience is what drives us, and is also what drives the formula for winning championships off the field, like with your ride or die vehicle. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On NFL. I got to let you know, man, you're here on Locked On NFL, but I'm going to tell you anyway, Locked On NFL is here with now 2 shows. First, the madman, and I say that with all affection, but total truth. Tyler Rowland kicks off the morning with the double shot of NFL Espresso, and then you stop by here, the barbershop with Tony Wiggins, for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On experts that you'll see every single day and you'll get used to, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns on all it. You're going to get it all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber, that's me, Tony Wiggins, your second listen at the new Locked On NFL YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. I've been dying to talk about Green Bay, man, because I think they're under the radar, and I'm real close to making them my pick for the Super Bowl in the NFC. Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love has really changed the narrative. This time last year, we were talking about how much they're going to miss Aaron Rodgers, and nobody's talking about that anymore. Check out what my man Peter Bukowski had to say along with Diana Rossini.
It seemed like it was something we're waiting, and all of a sudden it's just done. Obviously, behind the scenes, that's not what happened. What can you tell us about how this all came together?
It's almost like they're still in the 80s. The way they send these contract offers back and forth, and the red pens, and who's reading what and what language and articles of the wording. But I know in terms of in the trenches, this was all about the structure This wasn't about APY. They knew they wanted to make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Both sides really feel like they won. In fact, on the outside, I would argue Green Bay won this slightly more. And you're right, like the $75 million signing bonus, you see that number, I think, especially as a fan, and you go, oh my gosh, that's that. I mean, how is this going to hurt our roster? How, do we have the money for this? It's a good win for Jordan Love, and it's not going to hurt the front office's ability to continue to add pieces and pay the players to keep their core.
Here's the thing about the Jordan Love contract. History is going to tell us if this was a good deal. Like, we all have our opinions right now. And I will tell you that my opinion is they paid him too soon. And it's not because I don't think he deserved it. It's not because I don't think he performed. I mean, the dude threw for over 4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, had fewer than 12 interceptions. Like, Jordan Love played lights out last season, relatively speaking. I mean, he's a first-year starter. He's basically a rookie in actual NFL action, right? So for all those things, but I think when you're the Green Bay Packers, you have this opportunity. We see teams leverage this all the time. We have this opportunity because of the rookie contract to say, you know what, we're going to wait another year, because the thing that's harder than playing really good football for a year as a quarterback in the NFL is playing a second year really well in the NFL, because now everybody's got tape on you, bro. You have 17 plus games, including the playoffs, of tape that everybody can study. And trust me, if you're the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, or anybody else with the Green Bay Packers on your schedule, you've had pro scouts breaking down Jordan Love tape for months now. Like, they've got all kinds of research on what he likes, what he doesn't like, where he likes to go, what checks he likes to make, all kinds of stuff. This year, he's going to face defenses that are going to be a different level than what he faced last year. And those were NFL level defenses. So we'll see. I'm excited for him. Hey, I don't blame him for taking the check, right? Take that check. But I think the Green Bay Packers, this is going to look really, really good if Jordan Love is in the divisional round of the playoffs this year and looks like a franchise quarterback. It's going to look really, really bad if he has a drop-off. And I don't mean to compare Jordan to Daniel Jones, because I do think Jordan is better. But the Giants did this. They had a good year of Daniel Jones, and they paid the man, and now they can't wait to get out of that deal. There's a possibility that Green Bay did the same thing, not to the same level, because, again, I don't think Jordan Love and Daniel Jones are in the same conversation, but there is a possibility here that the Green Bay Packers jumped the gun. I hope for Jordan's sake they didn't, because let's be honest, just like the Steelers, NFL is better when the Green Bay Packers are relevant. So
yeah, it's almost like good quarterbacks have just handed each other the baton over the last 40 years. And I don't recall them ever having not having a good one, and they have managed to do this all the time and continue to stay relevant because they have figured out that position. Now, it's not just about the stats. We'll talk about stats in just a second when we go to Vegas, but it's not just about stats. For me, it's about workflow. It is also about the fact that they're in the building with him every day. And I think that has a lot to do with what they think his potential is. Right. Now, speaking of sacks, Gardner Minshew was named the starter out in Vegas. We had Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville, real nice dude, competent. The numbers will look good. Gardner Minshew will go 28 for 40 for 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 300 yards. And you'll lose the game. And stats do not tell the whole story with him, but for some reason, Antonio Pierce saw fit to say this.
When I left Allegiant Stadium on Saturday night, I thought it was going to be Aiden O'Connell. Well, Antonio Pierce, he met with us on Sunday and started the whole press conference off with an opening statement on who's going to be the quarterback. This was AP's decision. Here it is. Check it out.
I'm going to go ahead and start off. Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback the 2024 season. Myself, Telesco, and Luke Getsy discussed it this morning. A lot of things went into it. It wasn't based off of last night.
So that was the opening statement right there from Antonio Pierce. Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback, and you heard what he said. It had nothing to do, or it didn't have everything to do with what happened on Saturday night. It was a collective, right? What he saw in OTAs, what they saw in training camp, what they've seen in the games, and just the overall feeling to get this team going in the right direction.
They will be competent. However, there's a ceiling to how far they can get, because Gardner is going to, hopefully he doesn't get his receivers hurt, because he doesn't throw with a lot of velocity. But they're going to win some games and they're going to compete. But the bottom line is, it must feel real bad to know that there's a ceiling to how far you're going to go.
So first of all, Antonio Pierce left the name out of that conversation matrix, the decision matrix. It was Devontae Adams. If you want to tell me Devontae Adams didn't have a say and who this starting quarterback is, I'm not going to believe you. But you know who Gardner Minshew reminds me of, Wig, and you're a little bit older like I am, so you'll remember this name. It reminds me of Kyle Orton. because Kyle Orton went 10-5 in 2005 as Chicago Bears starting quarterback, and then promptly got buried on the depth chart. 2008, he had to come back out and he went 9-6. Those are the kinds of stats that I'm worried about. Now, Gardner Minshew doesn't have those types of win-loss stats, right? But 6-6 as the Jacksonville Jaguars starting quarterback in 2019. You're very familiar with that, obviously. And then last year, 7-6 as the Indianapolis Colts starting quarterback, went to the Pro Bowl. Granted, there's some other things in there with Pro Bowls these days. I got it. But at the end of the day, here's the thing about Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is a quarterback you can win with. I'm convinced of that. If a team were to dedicate the resources and have the coaching staff and the scheme to elevate Gardner Minshew, you can win with Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is never going to be the reason you win. And teams in the NFL want quarterbacks that are the reason you win, which is why, just like Kyle Orton, Gardner Minshew will never, ever, ever be considered a franchise quarterback. And the Las Vegas Raiders, they're not going to say it, but they're already looking at tape. They're like, when is Arch Manning coming out of Texas? Because we need a franchise quarterback. So, that's just Gardner Minshew's lot in life. He's going to make a whole lot of money being a bridge quarterback. I mean, he might be the youngest bridge quarterback in the NFL. He was a bridge quarterback at 23 years of age in 2019, I think. So, that's just kind of his lot in the NFL. And look, there's a lot of people who would love to live that life of a backup replacement bridge quarterback for years to come. But, as far as the competition between him and Aiden O'Connell, I mean, what are you really choosing from here? I think you basically choose from the guy that gives you the most opportunity to make plays. And, you could tell me that either guy won that job, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But next year, when the Raiders are on the clock, it's quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Shout out to your boy Q for that and for all the other stuff, hot takes, and the great stuff he does over on Locked On Raiders. Make sure you check that out. We're going to see if all of this pans out. I'm going to love to revisit this stuff in the middle of the year and see if some of these things that we say. But guess what? I'll be here every single day, different hosts, but the same host, same guys, same days of the week, a different person every day here in the barbershop. I like customers. I don't like seeing customers twice a week, just once a week. Once a week is enough, right? All right, man. Make sure you continue to check out Locked On NFL because it's new. There's 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with the double shot of NFL Espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with me, Tony Wiggins, for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the Madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. David, we'll see you same time, same place next week, man. For all of y'all take care. Thank you for joining Locked On NFL.